I'm making this video introduction to a clip from Project Veritas, and first I wanted to make it very clear that I have no intention of profiting from this video. Anyone can share it anywhere. Give the credit to Project Veritas and this young man named David, but first I want to read something to you. This is the transcript speech by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., August 28, 1963, at the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C. I am happy to join with you today in what will go down in history as the greatest demonstration for freedom in the history of our nation. 50 years ago, a great American in whose symbolic shadow we stand today signed the Emancipation Proclamation. This momentous decree came as a great beckoning light of hope to millions of Negro slaves who had been seared in the flames of withering injustice. It came as a joyous daybreak to end the long night of their captivity. But 100 years later, the Negro is still not free. 100 years later, the life of the Negro is still sadly crippled by the manacles of segregation and the chains of discrimination. 100 years later, the Negro lives on a lonely island of poverty in the midst of a vast ocean of material prosperity. 100 years later, the Negro is still languishing in the corners of American society and finds himself in exile in his own land. We all have come to this hallowed spot to remind America of the fierce urgency of now. Now is the time to rise from the dark and desolate valley of segregation to the sunlit path of racial justice. Now is the time to change racial injustice to the solid rock of brotherhood. Now is the time to make justice ring out for all of God's children. There will be neither rest nor tranquility in America until the Negro is granted citizenship rights. We must forever conduct our struggle on the high plane of dignity and discipline. We must not allow our creative protest to degenerate into physical violence. Again and again, we must rise to the majestic heights of meeting physical force with soul force. And the marvelous new militarism which has engulfed the Negro community must not lead us to a distrust of all white people, for many of our white brothers have evidenced by their presence here today that they have come to realize that their destiny is part of our destiny. So even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream that little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day down in Alabama, with its vicious racists, with its governor having his lips dripping with the words of interposition and multi-fixation one day right there in Alabama. Little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day every valley shall be exalted, every hill and mountain shall be made low, the rough places plains, and the crooked places will be made straight. And before the Lord will I be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. This is our hope. This is the faith that I go back to the mount with. With this faith, we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the genuine discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we will be able to work together, pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom forever. Knowing that we will be free one day. I think that's supposed to say knowing we will be free one day. And I say to you today, my friends, let freedom ring from the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire. Let freedom ring from the mighty mountains of New York. Let freedom ring from the mighty allegiances of Pennsylvania. Let freedom ring from the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado. Let freedom ring from the curvaceous slopes of California. But not only there. Let freedom ring from the Stone Mountain of Georgia. Let freedom ring from Lookout Mountain in Tennessee. Let freedom ring from every hill and molehill in Mississippi. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. And when this happens, when we allow freedom to ring, when we will let it ring from every village and hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up the day when all of God's children, black men, white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants, Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the world of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we're free at last. I got this speech from www.analytictech.com. You can go there to inspect it to make sure that I've said it in its entirety. And I wanted to make sure that I was perfectly clear of my stand on racism and prejudice in our earth today. Thank you. What follows is the Project Veritas clip that I saved from their channel on YouTube. Have a blessed day.
Whiteness, generally they do just want to refer to white people, but they will also extend that to anyone who speaks out against critical race theory. You'll often hear that you have implicit whiteness, or you are defending it, or they've called people race traitors, but
race traitors.
You get some pretty bad slurs if you speak up against this. I've been called a coon. I've been called some nasty things.
By whom?
Just by random people that I've spoken to about these issues, and I'm trying to explain to them why teaching people to segregate based on race or by gender or by any other inherent characteristic is wrong. But just to go against the orthodoxy, some people just react to it so negatively.
This is just in your life.
Yeah, this is just in my life.
Just in your life in the past, because you've spoken up about this personally. So what do you think your detractors are going to say after you go public with this information?
I think I'll end up becoming a black white supremacist. I think that'll be the label. But if not that, then just general, I might be called far right. I might be labeled some other slur. I don't care. People need to know about this.
What's your reaction to them calling you a quote black white supremacist or a quote race traitor, as you said?
Oh, I just laugh. I think it's really funny when people who claim to be on the side of progress and tolerance go around telling people what they have to and can't believe based on their race or their gender or whatever.
What is their end goal?
I don't think Hasbro has an end goal with this, honestly. This was the only meeting where this came up. However, I think the end goal for the conscious kid is to make sure that Hasbro is going to use their lens and Hasbro is going to push their principles through all levels of their product, marketing, packaging, what have you.
We also see a lot of invisibility in products and media, and especially in children's products and media when it comes to communities of color. This also has an impact in communicating whose lives and stories are worthy of being represented and celebrated. Regarding product content and anti-Blackness, a large portion of media or products are centered around or perpetuates anti-Blackness, and research shows that negative or deficient depictions of Blackness in media and products perpetuates this anti-Blackness as well as aversive racial attitudes toward Black people. And beyond attitudes, this can have an actual impact on interactions with Black people. And for both kids and adults, stereotypes in the product and content can reinforce dangerous hostility and resentment towards marginalized community and also exacerbate a lack of empathy, which is known as the racial empathy gap.
So invisibility in products with Blackness.
Yeah, I guess the point they're trying to make there is that you will see less, I guess, dolls or toys specifically for people with darker skin, which might be true, but again, we're not supposed to be a society where the Black people only play with the Black toys and the white people only play with the white toys. And to me, that's not progress, it's regress. It's a regress of the civil rights era and the progress that was made there.
How can creators either reinforce or disrupt biases through product? Well, product can do one of three things, or all three things. It can send efficient or affirming messages about societal structures and narratives. Product can also communicate messages about racial power and privilege, and it can also impact the way children see and interact with the world, whether creators are being intentional or not.
I think this is where they're really their mask starts to slip a little bit, because the term racial power is very, very interesting. Because again, why are they trying to get people to see the world in terms of race if they're the same people who are complaining that one group is privileged over another? That the assumption in itself that one entire race of people is privileged over another because of their skin color is racist in itself. You're assuming that because their color just makes them walk through life easier, or their color of the skin makes them have a harder life just by default. That's stereotyping, which is the thing they're supposed to be complaining about. But as you can see, they want to either reinforce or disrupt racial biases. They don't want a colorblind world. They want to teach people to see things in terms of race so that they can judge people in accordance to how they want them to be ranked.
Do you think there's anything valid about the teachings of this seminar?
I'd say the only thing that has a grain of truth is that some children might not necessarily make decisions based on race, but kids notice race because kids notice differences. I've been around children that have asked me, "Oh, why are you Black?" It's not because they're being racist, it's because they're a child and they don't know what's happening in the world. They're just trying to learn things. But these people are making the assumption that children are just racist by default if they notice a difference in race, specifically the white children.
They're not hiding their point of view. In fact, you may say many of the talking points are featured on their own website, publicly. And we talk about people who hide things versus show them. Oftentimes, journalism is about showing people things they don't want made public. Do they want people to see this?
I don't think they do. Maybe on the surface, you'll see companies say like we're promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion. Whatever most people interpret those terms to mean, I think they just generally interpret them as good. But to actually show that you're telling families that their 6-year-old is as racist as they are, I don't think is something they want public.
Did you grow up around mostly white kids or
Not, my school might have been primarily white, but the people I hung out with, my best friend was Hispanic. We hung out with a kid who was from Vietnam. We were a mixed group of kids, and we didn't ever judge each other based on race. Obviously, we noticed the differences between our families and our just cultures, but it was something to be celebrated, not something to judge and not something to condemn people over. Racism exists. I think we'd be fools to say that there is no racism in the world, but teaching children to judge others based upon race is not going to make a world with less racism. It's going to make a world with more of it. I think if people genuinely want to rid the world of racism, then they need to stop judging others based on their race and just get to know them as individuals. I think the best example of this is Daryl Davis. He's a black musician and artist, but he befriended and deconverted Ku Klux Klan members because he just got to know them and they got to know him as a person instead of just as a black person. And he's living proof that this is how you end racism.
Did anyone else at your company, you don't have to say their names, but did anyone else you know feel concerned as you did about this?
Not to my knowledge. At the end of the presentation, they have like a Q&A. Most people just give the clap and they say, "Thank you for bringing this to my attention." I don't think most people think too much about it.
Are you close with your parents?
Yes, very. I love both of my parents very much.
Do they know that you're doing this?
They do not, so they're gonna find out a bunch of things today.
And how do you think they're gonna respond to this?
It's gonna be fun. I think it's gonna be kind of heated, but I hope that they will see this and they understand that I am serious and I do not want my future children or my cousins or my nieces or nephews to become indoctrinated into a racist ideology. And that is why I am here.
Gonna be heated.
It probably will be heated.
Do you think they'll be proud of you, worried about you? What's gonna be the reaction?
Probably a mix. I've always been told I need to find my voice, and I'm not an outspoken person generally. I usually just am kind of quiet and I just observe and think things. But if this isn't finding my voice, I don't know what is.
Yeah, I was gonna say, this is the most outspoken thing someone could do. So how do you reconcile being not outspoken with doing this?
Surpass my weaknesses.
Fair enough. So some people are going to say you're giving up your livelihood to do this. You're going to face a lot of criticism from people who are attacking you.
Yep.
As you said, racially. Are you nervous about that? Are you concerned about that?
I'd be lying if I said I wasn't nervous or concerned. I don't know what's going to be the fallout of this. I'm sure I'm going to have a lot of detractors and critics. But I think this is a hill worth dying on. If the next generation of children is allowed to be indoctrinated to believing that racial segregation is a good thing, I don't think it will lead our country to anywhere good. I think we've come from that past. We know the bad things that happen when we segregate and separate people and judge them based on their race. And I don't think returning to that will bring anything good to this country. My family grew up, it was very, very important to them that I understood the history of America and the history of black people in America. And as a kid, I didn't really care about it, but I always thought Martin Luther King was just an amazing person. The I Have a Dream speech, though I don't know the entirety of it by heart, but just the dream that people could come together and disregard race and just stand together as equals, I think that's an American value. I think that's progress in its truest sense, that we should not be judging each other by the color of our skin, but rather by the content of our character and actions.
Are you right-wing?
I'm not, actually.
How would you characterize?
Not traditionally right-wing. I've always considered myself center-left. I don't want big government anymore because I see what they're doing. I grew up in a traditional Christian household, so I did grow up with those conservative values. But I wouldn't consider myself right-wing or conservative.
Are you a father?
I'm not. I do want to be one someday.
How old are you?
I'm 25.
What are you going to do next?
Well, I don't think Hasbro will like to keep me.
We'll find out.
We'll find out. But after this, I'm just going to keep speaking out. I'll keep speaking my mind. If I can make one person just step away from this ideology and say, you know what, maybe that's not the way, it's not the path towards a better future, then I think it's worth it. I think it's life after me for this.
What about packaging science?
I mean, I would like to continue it. I like my field. I think it's an important field, and it has impact on the world. It might be hard after this, because I don't know how companies like to hire whistleblowers, but we'll see.
There might be an employer who might hire you, who's supportive of your mission.
I hope so. I hope there are more people in corporations who oppose this and will not just quietly let this slip into their company and be used as a vessel to push, well, discriminatory ideologies.
Are you doing this to be famous?
No, I don't want fame at all.
And what do you think about fame being thrust upon you next week?
Carl Benjamin said this. This made me necessary. This isn't something I wanted to do. This is something I felt I had to do because I think I have some kind of duty, I guess. Maybe duty to the country, maybe duty to the people who came before, who fought for civil rights, maybe a duty to myself to stand up for principles. Not entirely sure, maybe it's all of them. But this is something I felt I had to do. It wasn't something I wanted to do in the slightest.
People are going to say you're doing this for money. What's your response to them?
If I was doing this for money, I would have just kept my mouth shut and stayed at my job.
Do you get paid well?
Yeah, it's a decent job. Engineering of any kind is generally pretty lucrative. I wouldn't say I was making huge amounts of money, but I was comfortable. Definitely comfortable enough that I could have just kept quiet and just kept getting paid, and then I'd have to live with the fact that I'm letting this be pushed through. Actually, no, I'd have to live with I'm helping a company push this through, and I don't think I could live with that.
Are you afraid?
A little bit. Just because this is so unknown. I've never done anything like this before. I feel like I'm stepping directly into the fray, you could say, because there are people who are speaking out against critical race theory, like I said, all across the country and the West, and they're facing some pushback because this is, it's a mainstream ideology now, and it's in a lot of our institutions, and it's, in some places, it's taboo to speak up against this. I don't know what's going to happen. I've always been the kind of person that I've thought about where I wanted my life to go and kind of try to conduct myself accordingly, but I didn't think I'd be sitting down whistleblowing for Hasbro ever.
You're an engineer, so there's a process, but there's no process here.
There's no process. This is uncharted territory.
The impact we can have as a company, if we think we can influence the social good, that's the role we think we ought to play as part of our company.
3, 4, 5 years old are inherently racist. Is that something Hasbro supports? The thought that children that young could make such a decision about race?
I don't think that's where we would, that's not what sort of a stance we would take.